Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the country, in the world, and whether you're watching us live or on a replay. Today, there's two of us, but it's mainly going to be my colleague. My name is Ian Barker, and I'm the Embarcadero Developer Advocate. You can email me at ian.barker@embarcadero.com. But with me today, doing the presentation, all the hard work and heavy lifting, is David Millington, who is our Senior Product Manager.
Hi everyone, glad you can join us.
Yeah. So as I said, we're just giving people a chance to join. There's quite a few pinging in as we speak. It's always the same. People go, "Oh, the webinar," and they click on it. I think we're probably there where we're going to be with people. Okay, so today, if you're not familiar with GoToWebinar, there is a questions box, and we will be answering those questions live. David will probably, if he spots a few whilst he's doing the presentation, will answer some of them as we go along. If not, we will make sure that we stop at the end and we go through the questions and answers. So don't worry, any that I can answer, and that will probably be about 2, which is what day is it and what time is it, then I'll answer. But if it's anything C++ technical, then David will handle that. Today's webinar is Amazing C++ UI with C++ Builder, why and how the new C++ Builder matters. We've done a lot of work on it, but enough talking from me. I'll hand you over to David. I'm going to turn my camera off now. You'll see me in the background answering questions. See you soon.
All right, thanks Ian. And yeah, just to echo what Ian said, please ask questions in the question panel. Because I'm going to be screen sharing, I probably won't see them during the presentation itself, but we'll absolutely see them at the end. And I'm happy to answer everything, including live demos and stuff. I think good talk can be improvised on the fly. So yeah, send the questions in. Right, so look, I wanted to talk to you today about C++ Builder with a focus on the user interfaces that you can build with C++ Builder. Now, C++ Builder is a C++ tool that's been around for quite a while. It was originally a Borland tool, and those of you who've used C++ for a while will remember Borland C++. Well, that's what C++ Builder is or came from. We're now Embarcadero. And we recently released a brand new toolchain about 6 weeks or so ago. And we're really excited by it. We think we have something really good, and we want to spread the word about C++ Builder, and this webinar is one of a few doing that. And today I just want to show you a few things about building user interfaces, and that C++ Builder is a really good tool for working with C++ directly with your UI. So we're just going to have a fairly tiny snippet of what C++ Builder is, a taster, basically. And I want to cover user interfaces, so fast and responsive Windows UI. I'm going to show you some of the sort of snazzy, cool things you can do by throwing in some shaders as well, mixed in with the native Windows UI. And I want to share a bit about our approach as well. So you as a developer may have problems that you need to solve. C++ is not always the easiest language to use. What's our approach been in making C++ usable? What tools do we provide, and what libraries do we provide, and how do they work, and how do they make life as a C++ developer a lot easier? Followed by, again, a really quick tour of the IDE. So just to get started on what C++ Builder is, it's a Windows IDE currently for C++. We also own Visual Assist, and that's the single most highly rated C++ code tooling productivity plugin for Visual C++, much higher rated than any other on the Visual Studio Store. We own that, and of course it's always going to be available for our friends over at Visual C++, but we've also been integrating it recently into C++ Builder just over the past 12 months. So we have a growing amount of the world's leading, most highly rated C++ productivity tooling built into the IDE. And we have a strong focus on building user interfaces. People use C++ for all sorts of things. But our main focus currently is on your user-facing applications where someone directly interacts with it. And I'm going to be showing you Windows today. So desktop applications effectively, although of course you can use C++ Builder for many other things as well. All right, so yeah, and the focus there is on powerful UIs that feel right. It's easy to create user interfaces with libraries that can be snazzy, but users expect certain behavior. You get used to how things work. And we have a big focus not only on the power for you as a developer in building user interfaces, but on helping you build ones that behave in ways that your users are very happy with. So, as well as really good C++ standard support, as you would expect, we also have our own extra runtime libraries and approach. Big focus on having usable libraries. I'm going to show you some examples of that. We've been under really rapid development in the past couple of years, sort of culminating in our delivery of the new toolchain about 6 weeks ago, and obviously that's going to be continuing. So fast development and a really good price as well. And we really want to sort of share the word that this is a new IDE, effectively, something that's worth looking at. So let's have a look at the power of user interfaces. Now, most apps, at least all desktop apps, need a user interface. But good user interfaces are quite important and can often be quite hard to build. A lot of people have found, especially in the past few years, that user interfaces have stopped being quite as responsive, or I put the word snappy on the slide, quite as snappy as they used to be. If you've ever done something like click the start menu in Windows 10 or 11 and just seen this tiny little bit of lag before it appears, or seen it appear but as blank, it just takes that fraction of a second, tiny fraction of a second before it draws, or anything like that, that's become increasingly common in a lot of software. We focus very strongly on having good quality libraries in general, but on user interface libraries that are very responsive, very performant, and very snappy. We want your users to feel that when they click a button, it happens right away. Updates right away, paints right away, shows something right away. We have real focus on quality there. We also focus on user interfaces that match user expectations, and this is kind of subtle and one of those you know it when you see it things. But you've probably all used software where some part of it didn't quite interact the way you thought. You might be used to let's say triple clicking on text to select a line, and then you do that in one particular app and it just doesn't work. Or trying to tab through things, you might use the keyboard a bit to navigate, and yet the tab behavior doesn't match the way it normally works on Windows, or something like that. There are all sorts of ways that applications can not really be consistent with the system. And this too is something that we've seen growing in the past few years as more and more different UI libraries have been used, often web-based ones, where in web-based UIs you have to re-implement almost everything. And it's a lot of work to try to mimic all the different ways that people are used to interacting. And so you end up with a subset. And so users end up sort of switching modes between every application, between what will work and won't. With C++ Builder, we try to focus very strongly on the standard Windows behavior for all user controls. And so someone who's used to Windows will pick up using an application that you build with C++ Builder, and everything that they try will work. And of course, we want user interfaces that are good looking. That is really important. And for you as a developer, they need to be easy to build, either yourself or matching what a designer sends you. And most importantly, they need to be easy to use some C++. And there are all sorts of UI options on Windows. I have a few here. This is not exhaustive, but we can start with MFC, which if you're a C++ programmer, especially one who's built Windows apps for a while, you're probably used to that. It's generally regarded as quite outdated these days, with fairly sort of limited visual preview and that kind of thing, but it's not really a very modern library. WinForms or skip past just requires .NET and interop. WPF is a very snazzy and modern UI library for Windows. Again, it works with .NET, and it's one of those libraries that can have latency issues because of how it works with the GPU backing and the time it takes to create the frame buffer is not the word I'm looking for, the device, and things like that. WinUI, another fairly new one from Microsoft. It has a declarative UI and does have live preview, suffers from some of the same problems. You've probably seen this in some Windows software from Microsoft itself that's built with WinUI. Big questions right now. I don't know myself, actually, if it is maintained. There was a lot of impetus for a while, and then it's just sort of vanished. And that kind of thing can worry you as a developer. Qt, this is very well known. It's a real workhorse. It's a really good choice. Very decent. Doesn't have native widgets. It creates its own, but it's powerful and good. And then there are a whole bunch of other libraries as well. WX widgets or the Juice widgets or something like that. So there's a lot of choice. There's nothing that we think really ticks all the boxes that you might be looking for. Something that is really highly performant. Zero latency, zero lag. You see a click and it actually reacts. You do want really snazzy graphics, something like WPF. It runs on the GPU, and one of the things that lets people do is it can have really nice graphics. And it comes with downsides with how it's implemented. But can you have zero latency and snazzy graphics at the same time? Well, we think you can. You really want the native widget behavior. So something like Qt or WX widgets won't necessarily give you that, or won't give you all the controls you need. Good point on the sides that I put when writing them earlier. Things like IME, which is for international input. All these details that are built into the operating system that need to work. And of course, visual design is really useful when you're building a user interface because it's a visual thing. You really need to be able to see it in some form, whether it's declarative and then seeing it, or seeing it and then interacting with it, which is perhaps more easy because we are used to interacting with user interfaces. You need to see what your users will see. And it needs to be C++ native. No interop, but also something that you actually address directly with C++ code. So all of these things is quite a lot to ask for. And that's what C++ Builder provides. So I want to show you some of this. So I'm going to show you not really a snazzy app, but some possibilities, some capabilities. The idea here is that I hope that you as a developer, may have used a bunch of other UI libraries, and you won't necessarily want to see someone demoing some good-looking app, because everyone can build an app, go with a designer and build a really good-looking app. But you want to know about the technology and the developer tooling that will help you build an app. So we do, of course, have designer-made simple apps, and they show you some of the wonderful stuff you can do. Oh, by the way, this is Getit, our package manager. And yeah, we have all sorts of sample apps that you can install and see the kind of really good-looking UIs that you can build. There are 3 of them on screen right now, and they look rather nice. But what I really want to show you is not something pre-made that looks really good, but the ingredients to show you the power that you can use. I want to show you that you can run shaders mixed with native Windows UI, for example, because that may spark a lot of excitement among people who've used native Windows UI and realize that it's not always easy. That kind of thing. The ingredients, basically. Speaking to you as developers who may not be familiar with our technology, I don't want to show you a snazzy end app. I want to show you the building blocks. So I'm going to show you start with a very simple app. And show you the designer and how it's easy to use, and show an app with native controls. Show that it has C++ code. Show that you can have some graphical snazziness. Theme things. But also show some things that are a little harder to do with native Windows. One big thing is putting controls on a title bar. Now, that's become increasingly common these days, but it's actually very difficult to do if you've ever tried to implement it. WPF makes it easier. They have a sort of title bar control, but even if you're using Qt, to my knowledge, you can't do that on Windows. Have to end up writing a really complicated Windows API code to put a control on what behaves like a title bar, and a lot of the tutorials and things out there are incomplete and don't give you correct behavior, and is really, really difficult to get right. I want to show you how easy things like this are with our tooling. So let's switch over to the IDE here. I'm really zoomed in because I'm screen sharing and want to make sure everything is visible when screen sharing. Obviously, I normally use this sort of zoomed out a bit, but I have the same very simple app on screen that I showed you before. And look, I just want to really quickly just run it and show you what I mean about quick response and that kind of thing, which is I just have the simple window here, but just very quickly that I don't know if you can even hear or see when I'm responding or clicking to a button, but things just appear straight away. And that's a very minor thing, and it's very difficult to get across when screen sharing over a webinar, especially because there can be lag there. But it's something that's really important to users. You want an app that feels responsive. And you as a developer probably want to create a responsive app as well. You might sometimes use your own app and feel a little sad if it's not quite as responsive as you want. But what I want to show here is you have a fairly standard form designer, something that we actually came close to inventing many years ago, with some native Windows controls. So this here is a button, but it's a real Windows button. This is not a widget that we've written. We haven't tried to re-implement a button. This is a real Windows button. That means it's going to have the right behavior for your users. Up here we have a drop-down, what's called combo box or a drop-down box. And again, we have not implemented a new version of that, which is something that, as I mentioned before, people end up doing a lot and then not managing to get all of the system behavior. Well, we are using the real system control. Now you can easily create custom controls with C++ Builder, really powerful custom controls. But our library system actually allows you to bring in all of the native Windows behavior as well. So you can build a completely custom control and make sure that it carries with it all of the behavior your users will unconsciously and intuitively expect. So we have a palette here with a whole bunch of different things, all of your standard things like buttons and checkboxes and various containers and that kind of stuff. And there's a whole heap of different controls, actually, various tab ones and date ones, and things to do with taskbars and jump lists, which is when you right click on something and comes up with a list. Basically everything you can think of to build an app on Windows is there. You can even mimic some of the really old ones if you want. Some fairly new Windows 10 style ones if you want toggle switches, that kind of thing. I'm not going to run you through all of these, but I just want to show you that basically you have something like, let's try a memo, and I can drag that across or just double click if I want to. And you get a standard multi-line text field, and you have a bunch of properties that you can edit over here on the left. These are categorized currently. But you can also change how that's displayed. But it's very easy just to make it read only, for example, if you want to. Anything like that, or change its contents. So there's what I'm trying to show here is a powerful form layout engine. I want to point out as well that I'm running at high DPI right now, and so this form designer is completely smoothly scaled with that as well. And your app, when you run, will scale higher or lower, depending on the user's DPI, no matter what you design it at. So I really want to communicate here just that there's a whole bunch of really powerful components, but also that they're the native inbuilt Windows controls, and that with that you get the right behavior. So if I ran this app, for example, I have a text input, and if I were running on a Japanese locale, I would be able to invoke the Japanese IME, and you will get what Windows itself provides, and that kind of thing is really important. So what I also want to show, though, is that it's all C++. So if I switch over here, I have some C++ code. Now, let me show you something actually that are called events. So if you use something like Qt, perhaps you might be familiar with signals and slots. We have something very similar. So if I select a button, you can see here I have the properties on the left, which are simply ways to toggle various behaviors. But we have events as well. And events are things that occur when the user interacts in some way. So an input, for example, on click, it's very common to click a button and you want code to happen. So in the same way that you might be familiar with a signal, which you can think of as an event, and a slot sort of hooking up eventually to a method, we do something very similar. I'll just double click that here, and it will create a new method for me. And this method is then invoked when the button is clicked. You can see the object inspector here is familiar with all of the compatible methods by their signature in the current file. And what I really want to get across here is it's all very interactive. If I make the method empty and then save, it will be deleted, and it will disappear from the object inspector as well. So you can hook these up, you can write them yourself, and then find them in the drop down. You can automatically create them, that kind of thing. But it's a very nice direct connection here between like a visual designer and then actual C++ code. So I have here something, for example, with the, I have a combo box up here, and this will actually change themes. And I've just hooked that up. So I can scroll until I find the on change event. And I created some code, some real C++ code that runs with the change event. And there's no sort of complex system here. There's no pre-processing or macros or bindings or anything like that. You just directly have a C++ method, and then you can directly, I suppose in C++ terms you would call binding to it in the object inspector. But really it's just knowing there's a method pointer. It's very straightforward and very simple and very easy to understand if you ever want to dig into how it works. There's no need for complex systems that you might be familiar with. You have a really direct connection between your user interface and your code. So getting back to the form designer. Now, I pointed out here that these are real Windows controls, so I'm running here in a standard Windows theme. Now I'm going to go into the project options and start showing you some of the graphical snazziness, because what I've shown you here is very basic. You have a button and a drop-down combo. And I'm not trying to sort of impress you with really fancy controls. I'm trying to show you that you have something solid and robust. We do have really fancy controls, but I want to show you something really solid and robust is there, that really works as your users expect. But if you're familiar with Windows UE programming using the inbuilt Windows API UE library, the standard Windows library, pardon me, then you'll be familiar with the fact that you have to do a lot of work to customize as well necessarily make something look good. Taking over painting and drawing and scaling with high DPI and putting something in the title bar and stuff like that. All of that can be quite hard. Except of course we make it easy, which is the point really. So I want to start showing you some of the graphical snazziness that we can do. And again, remember these are ingredients. So I want to show you some theming. It has not been easy for any other library, including MFC or anything else that uses the standard Windows controls to fully theme an application. And I also want to show you running shaders directly in line with and around Windows controls. If you're familiar with the Windows API and Windows controls, this will be impressive just because of what it can do and how easy it is. And if you're not familiar with them, you might think that, okay, mixing controls and shaders sort of running together is standard. And what I really want to communicate there is just how easy it is to build something that does it. So I'm going to start off by going into the project options. I want to show you theming here. And I'm just going to go to my application appearance setting, and I have a whole bunch of custom styles. You can build your own. It's very easy, but I've just built in a couple here, one called Glow and one called Windows 10 Dark with the default style. The default style is what we're seeing in the designer. I'm actually going to change the default style to Windows 10 Dark. And you'll notice that the form design immediately reflects that as well. And now when I run, I'm going to show you a couple of cool things. So just wait while that compiles and runs. So first of all, these are all standard Windows controls. And as I mentioned, if you've done a whole bunch of Windows API programming before, then the ease that all of these look completely different to how they might otherwise is rather impressive. And I mentioned before the snappiness. I'm just going to show you what happens, for example, if you change the control, and you can see I can easily change between different appearances very easily. As I'm screen sharing, I can see some artifacts. This is immediate and very fast when you're normally using an app. But what I also want to show is that you have all these things like a button, okay, and that's normal. But I want to show the background here, and you might notice that as I move the mouse, and I hope when screen sharing over GoToWebinar, you'll see that this is very responsive and is showing this sort of glowing pattern underneath the mouse cursor. And that's because I'm running a shader in the background here. It doesn't have to be in the background. It could be in the foreground, could be mixed. You could have multiple different ones. You can have different controls and different layers. You can have a control rendered entirely with shaders, any kind of Z order here. But what I really want to show is the ease of mixing shader-driven graphics with very fast, very performant, inbuilt, snappy Windows UI controls. This is very, very rare. I'm not actually aware of any other user interface library that does it. And so as I move the mouse, this is immediately and very swiftly following the mouse, and that's running a shader live. You can see it follows here. So if I sort of resize this to be a little smaller, then you'll see you can pretend this is a calculator app, and you end up with this kind of glow effect behind the buttons, which I think looks quite cool. That's why I chose it, because I think it looks really snazzy myself. Just as I move the mouse around, this kind of thing can be quite subtle, but a really interesting UI effect. And again, what I want to carry across here is the absolute responsiveness that I'm seeing as I move the mouse as it runs shaders, then of course as I interact, and how smoothly these whole different things, shader system and a native Windows API button, and then taking over the drawing of the button but with really responsive behavior, mixed in with shaders which work another way, are all seamlessly working together. And then, of course, if you've ever tried dropping controls in the title bar of a Windows API application, standard Windows app, you know how difficult it is. And of course, we have one just sitting here, and it's really easy. Form design, and you just put it there. So an amazing mix of technologies happening in here. And this is what I want to show you by ingredients. I don't want to show you an app that's been pre-built to look really good. I want to show you the ingredients to hopefully spark imagination and a bit of excitement about the kind of thing that is very easy to achieve. So I could talk about this kind of thing all day, but I really should get off a demo. But I want to tell you now what you saw. Those were the ingredients. That you had some real fundamentals, the native controls, nothing that's re-implemented and half done, but every behavior that your users will expect, even the ones you haven't thought of, will be there. That includes everything you can think of. I put IME and internationalization and accessibility and RTL and that kind of thing on screen, but everything you can think of. And performance. This is something that can be quite difficult to get across when screen sharing due to the nature of screen sharing, but I emphasize it a lot. It is really snappy and really responsive. But of course, it's very modern. You can fully take over all rendering and theming and build your own as well. And everything that you might expect, like embedding Edge, for example, is of course available. And then the more difficult things are made easy. title bar controls can be really difficult. Even on WPF app, they're not super simple. On the standard Windows app, using the standard Windows API, it is incredibly complex, and it's just there. Or shaders. We don't have any kind of like stolen area, like a rectangle where you can't mix things, which you might be familiar with if you have, video playback or something, or some other sort of shader area. This is working via Skier, by the way. So we're mixing Skier shaders in with normal Windows API rendering. It fully works with all the layered controls and everything you want. Absolutely seamless and very responsive. So I want to talk now about a bit about our approach, really, to C++, which is about providing really useful runtime libraries. So I want to illustrate this with a few examples. I want to talk about text encodings. So everyone might use UTF-8 these days, except on Windows, where Windows uses a 2-byte character set, UTF-16, and you might have to deal with a whole bunch of other encodings as well. Windows 1252 is one of the really common ones that you might have data lying around in, or your users might, which is a Latin-based character set, but there are a whole bunch. And this is a real pain, and while we all wish everything just moved to UTF-8, and would be great just to provide UTF-8 utilities, we live in the real world where Windows is not UTF-8 based and probably never will be. And you have to deal with a bunch of different text encodings if you want to write a Windows app and you want to have any kind of text data. And that can be a challenge with C++. Those of you who are watching and have tried to convert encodings in strings are probably suffering flashbacks of the kind of difficult code that you had to write. And you might be really worried about what's coming with C++ 26 because the code that you wrote that was really unpleasant has been deprecated and will be removed. And so not only is this a tough job, but you can't even rely on C++ to do it. And so we have a couple of really simple, or should be really simple questions. Can you load text from a file and get the right bytes in the right type of some C++ object or other, and can you convert? I want to have an example here for those of you who aren't familiar with different text encodings of what can happen. At the top, the dark screenshot there is a text file that is written in the traditional Windows text encoding, Windows 1252. And I wrote some very common French phrases there. I apologize for how stereotypical they are. I chose them because I have forgotten most of my high school French, and because these are all phrases that have extended characters in. Café au lait has an E acute, which is an E with an upwards facing slash above, and same with a bunch of other text. So you might try to load this, and you might get something that instead of saying cafe has caf and then a glitch, something where it can't represent the character. In this case, I did that by loading it as though it is UTF-8, which is the most common text encoding in the world. Very reasonable thing to do, but happens to completely break the text. Second screenshot is basically the same thing in reverse. UTF-8 text. But I naively wrote code assuming it was the old-fashioned Windows character encoding, and of course I broke it, but in a different way. Broken again, but even worse. The point here is that in text, the same bytes can mean different things. So it's really important to be able to load them correctly and really important to be able to convert them correctly, especially on Windows, because you always have to convert to UTF-16 to interact with the user interface. So you might really happily write UTF-8 string processing, but at some point you've got to get it safely to the UI. Can you do that? Now, text encoding is a famously hard problem. I linked to a particular Stack Overflow answer here, how to start with a UTF-8 file, which is the most common text encoding in the world, convert it to a Windows format string. And I want to read out a snippet of that. So you can use std convert UTF-8 facet, which encapsulates conversion between a UTF-8 encoded byte string and UCS2 or UCS4 character string, which can be used to read and write UTF-8 files. In order to use the facet, you usually create a locale object that encapsulates culture-specific information as a set of facets that collectively define a specific localized environment. Once you have a locale object, you imbue your stream buffer with it. And this is getting really complex. And if you actually look at the code that you write to do this, it is very difficult to follow. It's not very pleasant to use. Here is another Stack Overflow answer where I was looking up some things about how to use code convert. And this was one of the top rated ones on Google. It is 2 pages long when printed with a diagram and a bunch of code. I just want to pull out one part of it. It is, according to the person who posted it, quote, a very simple example. And this, I think, is one of the things where C++, which is a beautiful and powerful language, is not always easy to use. And you have these use cases that you need to do, like converting text, and it's not easy. And our approach is to fully support all C++, but to add in a bunch of extra useful classes and methods that help you get common tasks done easily. So in C++ Builder, strings are strongly typed with their encoding. That includes UTF-8, it includes Windows 1252, it includes a Windows-style Unicode string. And you can easily convert by assignment. Because strings carry with them information about their encoding, you don't need to bring in facets or imbue something. Same with text file loading. It becomes really straightforward and really simple. Here's an example. I have a Windows 1252 ANSI encoded text file, and because it's a webinar, I'm not showing you how to detect that, but we have methods to detect that as well, to say, is it ANSI, is it UTF-8, is it UTF-16? Single method call. But let's assume that I've done that, and I have my string type here, ANSI string T, ANSI string type, code page 1252, and then I just load an entire file, T file, read all text from a path in, and treating it as an ANSI encoding, which is basically saying single byte. And that's all. You don't need 10 lines of code with facets and code converts and stream imbuement. It's a single line. You just strongly type the string. It knows what it is. And that means that when you assign or construct between different types of strings, it can convert safely and losslessly. So Unicode string is a string type that is UTF-16 on Windows, and I can just assign my code page 1252 string to it, and it will be correct. You don't have to worry about it. It just works. And I want to point out other things which I sort of skipped over. That T file read all text. We have some really nice file and directory and file system management classes, including various objects, and obviously it's using a static method here. But it's really common just to have a text file and you just want to load it. And so why not just have a single method to do that and return the string? That kind of thing that's just built in there for what are the common use cases, okay, just have something to do it, is really common with our libraries. We basically focus on trying to help you achieve things. We figure you shouldn't have to figure out how to do something. There should just be a method to help you do it. So we have lots of stuff like that. And all our file system code, by the way, which is not the focus of this webinar and not the focus of this example, is a lot simpler to use than std file system. So I want to communicate here. Our principle is the runtime libraries that are written for actual use should be easy to use. C++ is a really powerful language, but can be written in a really difficult way. There's no reason for that. We want to provide simple to use, powerful code for you. So I'm just expanding here because some of you may have questions about what happens with assignment between different string types, especially when you go back to something narrow. I expanded this code example, so you can see creating the UTF-8 encoded string from that ANSI encoded string. You can obviously convert to and from UTF-8 and UTF-16 just by assignment as well. But what if you have a UTF-8 string that contains characters that are not representable in the Windows 1252 code page? maybe you're thinking, okay, aha, this is where it breaks down. Well, you will get an exception if you try to do that. That's the bonus of type safety. The code here is aware of what it is and aware if it can work. And what this means is that strongly typed strings mean strongly typed encodings, and so there's no facets or imbuement or code convert. I think I've talked about this long enough. I'm really just trying to communicate how easy it is. You wonder why it isn't normally done like this. C++ is a strongly typed language, so of course you want to carry the full type of a string around. But here's the really tricky thing, the really nasty thing. If you're writing standard C++, you might have written a lot of code to convert different encodings using code convert, and it's deprecated already, and it's going to be removed in C++ 26. And to my knowledge, there's no replacement. To my knowledge, the replacement advice is use another library. And I hope I'm correct in saying that, but that's my understanding. I haven't seen anything else. The most recent thing I saw about it was in 2023, where this was the case. And this leaves people in a really difficult situation. So you have a choice to either bring in a really complex library like ICU, which is very capable, of course, and write a lot more really complex text, or use something like C++ Builder, where we've already done it for you. And you can write your code using our methods and our classes and our libraries, and it works now and it will always work in the future as well, because we don't remove stuff like this. So use a powerful, capable, easy to use library. Now, look, that's an example, and I'm just trying to communicate some of our approach. But here are a few things that require complex or verbose C++ that should be simple. Splitting a string by a delimiter or replacing substrings. Okay, but that's enough about string handling. So there's a wonderful quote once that strings of C++ is a big embarrassment. They could be easier to use. Well, ours are. We have our own string types, as you saw, and of course you can convert those very easily to standard C++ std string. But what about things like navigating the file system or getting a canonical path? Std file system is not the easiest one to use. Working with the registry, well, there's nothing in the standard library about that because it's Windows only, but we provide really powerful, really useful libraries. What about something like queuing a method to run just after a short delay? That's really useful to do. If you use patterns, if you've ever used JavaScript, you might know about debouncing, for example. Something like especially in a user interface application, I want to run this, but just not quite yet, is a really common pattern. But how do you do it in normal C++? How do you do it easily, no less? Or even networking, making an HTTP request, really common, but can be really verbose with something like Boost, Boost async IO. Why does it have to be verbose? Why can't you have these really useful, neat classes that encapsulate everything, and you have these really useful methods to call? And look, that's C++ Builder. Our principle is that we have all these classes and methods that are written for actual use. We need to get something done. We make it easy to get it done. Now we have, of course, support for things like Boost if you want to use it. But what we try to do is make it so it's not necessary to dig into the complex parts. A general principle, I think in general, is that we always try to make the powerful and complex things available if you want them. You can always drill down into more detail and into more sort of quirks of behavior, but we try to make the fundamentals, the most common 99% are really easy to use. And we think that's written for actual use, because you've got code to write and you need something, to achieve something, you need to get it done. And we try to provide the tools just to get it done quickly. So with that, I want to give a very quick tour of the IDE, including some of Visual Assist, and I will try to keep this very fast. I have already shown you the form designer and a little bit about the code editor. I want to show you here that I set up shader. I have a lambda that is called when the mouse is moved and when it's drawing, and it's invoking my skier shader. Very standard, normal sort of C++ environment here. Where it gets exciting is where we've built in a bunch of Visual Assist. And Visual Assist is very performant. Performant, again, is something to note if you happen to be using other C++ code tooling tools. Very performant productivity tool for C++. Focuses heavily around navigations and refactorings and that kind of thing. I'll give you an example of, and obviously we have various refactorings like renaming and creating declarations and implementations, extract method and so forth. And we're adding these steadily over time. We started integrating a year ago with 3, and we just keep on extending and building in more release after release. So if I wanted to extract this to a method, for example, I could refactor or right click and extract a method. But there are other sort of useful things. Visual Assist is built with the same concept of being built by people who actually write code. So we do stuff that's useful. So let's say I write something like numeric limits. Notice that a code completed, by the way, but I haven't got the numeric limits or the limits header present. So it's interesting that it is completing that. But what I can write to is then right click and go to refactor, and I can add the include for it. And if I now scroll up at the top, you will find that limits, there we go, limits has been added. So I want to tell you what you just saw, which is that you saw code completion work for something, for code that was not even, a header that was not even present in this particular unit. And it knew about the type and was able to add the right include for me. This kind of thing is built very much on the idea of just the actual problems that you run into and solving them. Just because you haven't included a header doesn't mean that you don't want to use something from that header. It just means you haven't used it yet. And so it knows about all the standard library and will happily code complete. And it knows when you're writing code that it could be standard library or could be your own code that relies on a header that hasn't been included yet, because it understands all your libraries as well as your application and will offer to add the include. Saving that trip up to the top of the file to add the hash include statement. All of these things are really based around just sort of saving time and actual experience and use writing C++ and making it easy. I think it's probably worth going on to show navigation. So let me sort of right click here, and I'm holding control. When I hold control, everything turns into a link. So I can look at all the members of my form, but I'm just going to go here to the declaration of this skier paint box. And I'm going to control click again, and this time I get a more complete menu. You can see here that I have both the definition and the declaration of the type. I can go to the constructors, for example. There are 2 of them, or go to a member of the type. I might as well show that actually. There's all sorts of members available here, and you have various fuzzy search. Very easy to filter and see something. But what I particularly want to show you is the real code understanding engine that underlies Visual Assist. So if I right click here, it knows about everything. So I can see all of the base classes and easily jump to one of them. Now, if you write a lot of code and you have, let's say, 1 million or 6 million lines of C++ code, and Visual Assist is regularly used with code bases that are gigantic, then navigating around can be one of the hardest things. And understanding the object-oriented behavior, the polymorphic behavior, can be hard, especially in code bases or areas that you're not familiar with. So I can see here all the base classes. Let me go to one of them, and I can open that up. And it found the declaration here. But interestingly, if I right-click, I can now see all the derived classes as well, because the base class that I went to has multiple descendants. And so I can very quickly understand and see the polymorphic tree. Let's try. I want to find a virtual method. Let's try this virtual method draw. I'm going to right click on that. Oops, sorry, not right click, but control left click turns it into a link. And I can see that this virtual method has 2 overrides as well. And I can obviously quickly go to any of them. This kind of thing is really useful because, well, polymorphism is fantastically powerful. Sometimes you don't really know exactly what you're dealing with and what has been called. And so you can navigate an entire class hierarchy here very easily. And there are so many more Visual Assist related tools. I showed you go to member before. Go to related was the one I just showed you, but it's I think most nicely invoked by control clicking on something. It's far more powerful than I showed you. You should try control clicking or invoking go to related on the hash include statement, for example. Try that. Find symbol, for example, knows about all the symbols in the entire project and all its headers as well. So it really knows about everything that is available. Very powerful tooling, and we're just extending it and adding to it every day. So that was a really quick taste. As you can see, there was a lot that I didn't show you that I kind of hinted at. But I want to show you, what was it that you just saw in this little preview, this little snippet of C++ Builder? And that was, you saw a focus on building quality user interfaces where quality is especially focusing on how your customers feel, how your users feel. Building a Windows app, so you have the real Windows native behavior, the real Windows native controls and the native feel. And what people are used to, the way they're used to interacting with it will always work. And very highly performant and responsive and snappy. And I think this is particularly useful to emphasize, as especially in the past few years, we've seen a sort of growing dissatisfaction with, we have these really powerful computers, and yet sometimes when you click something, it just doesn't react for that site time. Why? Well, it doesn't happen with our libraries. Ours are fast. Just use it and will react. And really graphically powerful, easily themable. And if you want to write an app, or design an app that has your own branding and your own look and feel, you don't have to do something like using a web view and trying to re-implement a bunch of stuff. Your designer can build a theme for you, and you can apply that very easily. But that's not the only thing. Full integration with skier rendering as well, so you can mix and match all sorts of things, and it's fully integrated and seamless. So you can even run shaders at the same time as you're in different layers, even as you're using other UI. And then there are the difficult things. If you've used the Windows API, I dropped in casually putting a drop-down combo box on the title bar. It really is very easy. I dropped 2 controls, and I can show this time afterwards. And it's there. One of the most difficult tasks to achieve using the Windows API, and it's just easy in there. So difficult stuff made easy, and it's native to the operating system because that's important for the quality of your apps, and it's native to C++. You can build C++ and write in C++ directly connected. We also have an approach for usable C++ because C++ is a really powerful language, but it really could be easier to use sometimes. And we write libraries that are intended for actual use. When you've got to get something done, there'll be a library that we provide that helps you get it done easily. We want you to spend your time getting stuff done, not figuring out how to get stuff done. And we have a massive runtime library for all sorts of use cases. And of course, you can always drill down to the more complex things if you need to. We try to make those 99% of the use cases very straightforward, but we always give you the power to do more. And we have world-class tooling. We've got really good navigations and refactorings, and we're on a roll. We released an entire new compiler and toolchain just a few weeks ago. We started integrating Visual Assist 12 months ago. It is the highest rated C++ productivity plugin on the Visual Studio Store, and we have just built it right in, and we're extending it every release. So I hope that communicates some of our ethos and some of the power. And look, if you're a developer, basically we want to provide you everything you expect, good standards compliance and a really performant, fast compiler. We build in parallel by default with, you know, really efficient implementation, because we should, so we do. Plus more, you know, we want the extra RTL, and we want something that's designed for use. And we want to make it easy for you to build user interfaces, and, you know, easy for you to connect that to your C++ code. But we also want you to have technology in that you feel proud of using. Yeah, we've had customers who've written Electron apps, for example, and it's heavily based around web views, and, you know, it looks nice, but you're really heavy on the system and really heavy on RAM and performance, and, you know, the way you interact is all fully custom. And you've had some conversation with developers who feel a little embarrassed about this. You know, we want to provide you tooling that you can be proud of, or, you know, an app that you can be proud of. You know, ship something that works and works really well. And we focus very heavily on providing the tools for you to do that at the same time as you can achieve everything that you need to achieve. And if you're buying tools, you know, you might not be a developer, but you might be looking for a C++ tool. And we've done studies on what all the stuff that I just showed you, and of course a lot more, does for C++ developers. And when a developer, you know, knows that C++ Builder is going to provide something, you might not know that we have a nice HTTP class, but, you know C++ Builder, so you can expect it. And we've done studies showing that developers like this can build an app 5 times faster than sticking with standard C++, really. You know, those are actual studies that we've done. And, you know, that translates to real value for you, because it's important how quickly apps have turnaround, and how much overhead there is, and how fast you can get it out, and how fast you can get a new version out, or even your first version out to market. And they're really high quality, performant apps, visually impressive apps, and they're ones that feel right to your customers. So it's going to carry a feel of quality to your users. So apps that look good and are finished faster. So C++ Builder, really trying to get the message out there that we think we have something that in really practical terms is worth using. And we're excited about that, and we think that you should be too. We have really good C++ and great UE tools and great productivity tooling, and we're moving fast. It's always growing. It's affordably priced. We have a whole bunch of different options. And that C++ Builder, you know, really easy UE, easy coding, and a real alternative for Windows C++. I'd like to point you as well at cppbuilder.com, which is a really simple landing page with some, you know, very straightforward points about the product and how it will help you. And Embarcadero.com. You know, this is the company that I work for that makes C++ Builder, and that's where you can buy it. So with that, thank you, and Ian, let's move over to questions, please.
Yeah, let me turn my camera on, so I will appear again like magic. You know, we said before this, there are going to be quite a lot of new people. Perhaps they won't have many questions. You were wrong. There are a lot of questions, and that's a good thing. And actually, quite a lot of love for what they were saying as well. Paul Jackson saying love it, and I think he was showing Visual Assist kind of functionality at that point, and a few other things as well. I answered quite a lot of the questions. Quite a lot of people asking things like whether we do Android again, whether we do Mac OS again. I have answered that directly and said, look, let me know, or email David or myself and tell us what's the most important platform for you and what sort of projects you're working on. It was important to kind of prioritize the CLang integration. You were going to say something, David.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So I have on screen right now that we're moving fast, and we are. So we have a brand new toolchain that we're really excited about. You know, we think we're providing great C++ that came out about 6 weeks ago, I think. I don't know, maybe 7 now. And it's for Windows 64-bit. And of course, we're going to be moving and adding more platforms as well. So this is a Windows-focused webinar because that's what we have right now. But you know, if you need other platforms, you know, keep an ear out. You're going to hear something at some point.
And also let us know, because I mean, it helps us. We obviously do our own research internally and work out, you know, what we think the right platforms. We've done some surveys and things like that. But also, if there's a project you're working on, first of all, we'd like to know what kind of things you're working on for my benefit, because I'm the developer relations guy. And so I like to be able to show case studies and people actually using our products and the kind of things they're using them for. But it also helps us give some statistics to people and say, here's why this platform is important. We've got these people working on these kinds of projects, and you know, just so that we're not you're not an invisible crowd of happy or unhappy people. We'd like you to know. So, couple of questions. One question from Paul Jackson is, one of his questions is, when is it best to use the standard library or the RTL? I'm not sure that's going to be an easy question to answer.
Oh, well, I mean, you can fully mix and match, because obviously we have a C++ standard library, and I think the thing is that our extra classes and methods and stuff just sort of add on to it. I mean, we have our own strings, for example, but you can easily convert one of our strings to a std string and back again, you know, every time you need, you know, some random C++ library that you know, got off GitHub and needs a std w string, then of course it's really easy to use. And I think the real answer is that, you know, you should use it when you have something that can be a little complex to do in C++, and you want to say, okay, have these C++ builder guys written an easier way to do it? And the answer should always be yes. So, you know, I showed string handling and text reading from a file, but I mentioned things like, you know, networking with an HTTP request and stuff like that. All these kind of things that, you know, of course you can do, but that you ask yourself, okay, is there a simpler way, you know, a faster way to get it done? Ask, okay, is there a C++ builder class that will help me here? And I think that's when you should ask. You know, I would stick to using the standard library for things like, you know, the algorithms, for example, or, you know, other things like that are really good. But you can think of this more as a sort of you've got something to get done, and if there's a question about whether we provide an easier way to get it done, the answer is likely yes. I don't know if that's exactly the answer you're looking for, but I think it's the best one because it's so broad in functionality.
Yeah. We had another question as well, which is kind of not related, but I suppose it is. And I'm not quite sure why they're asking this question. Is compiling a setup installer also as simple as what you showed? And I think the answer to that is yes, it is. Is that right? I'm not sure what they mean by setup installer.
Setup or whatever. Look, we don't have built-in like a particular installer technology, but we have IDE hooks so that you can do things in your post-build script or deployment or something. So, you know, if you have an installer like setup, you know, you can absolutely build that into your build system easily. There are also add-ons to C++ Builder. You know, I know of third-party add-ons that integrate that directly in the IDE. So I think anything like that is either there or something you can add easily.
Yeah, install builder, all of those kind of report, those install creator type apps work very well. I spent a long time, 25 years of my career writing what you would call commercial end user apps. So apps for people who are not technical, standard mom and pop shops, as they would say, but also just general members of the public. And I found I used setup a lot. It's written in Delphi, so of course we're a fan. But it's actually a very competent installer. But so is Install Builder as well. And I forget the others. There's lots out there. It's not difficult really. Building an installer is actually relatively straightforward. The hard part is signing your code. That's where it gets tricky. So that was that question. Quite a lot of people, I don't know whether you want to show exactly what we're talking about here, but a lot of people were saying they really liked the combo box in the title bar. And several people said, how did you do that? And I'm like, it's part of the VCL. Do you want to just...
I can show that live. I think some people have sort of pre-planned talks, and of course I have slides here, but I'm very happy to go and do stuff live. I think that is a great one.
Yeah, quite a few people mentioned it.
All right, let's do that. So you can see my screen right now. I'm going to close the project. I'm going to start with a brand new project and show you. So I'm just going to do a new VCL application. VCL is the name of the UE library that I was showing you. So I'll just expand here the palette on the side and shrink everything down because I'm running, as I said, for screen sharing, trying to expand everything. I normally work with a little more screen space. So let's start with a title bar panel. And this is something I'll just drop on screen. So I just double clicked from the tool palette and got dropped here. And this is going to be something that will represent the title bar. It's basically a container for controls. And then I'm going to grab my combo box and just drop that as well. I'm double clicking. Where'd it go? It's a problem with running such a small screen. Let me see if I can put that somewhere.
I should point out, everybody, that David is running a virtual machine on a Mac. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So, okay, I found it. I double clicked, and I think it had put itself behind the title bar panel. So what I've done, you probably saw me interact with the structure view. I just dragged it onto the form and onto the title bar panel. So it's sitting here as we have a container. Now, the next thing you need to do is go to the form itself, which represents the whole window. So let me expand again. I need to be able to have it wide enough that I can see the tabs here for properties. And so I'm going to, where are we? Going to arrange just by name because I'm more used to having everything alphabetized. And somewhere down here is a title bar property. I think if I remember, this is called caption or something like that. Also live demo, my memory fails and I can't remember what it's called.
What is it you're looking for?
Oh, there we go. Custom title bar.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want to define a custom title bar. And so that's oh, golly, I really need to expand stuff here. So I can define a whole bunch of different properties around that, but the key one is to expand it and choose the control that is the container for controls. So I choose the title bar panel, which, as I said, is the main container for that. And then I'm just going to click enabled. And you can see immediately when I click enabled, the container moved upwards, and now it is in the title bar. And so I have my combo box here that I can just move around. And you'll see I have all the standard window buttons and that kind of thing as well. Now this is fully customizable, so several things. On the form with the, where is it, custom title bar, I can set a bunch of colors and that kind of stuff if I want to, and change the height and various basics like showing the caption. If I turn that on or off, you can see that the form 1 caption next to the icon is appearing or disappearing. System colors means it will always match automatically the current Windows settings, but if you want a completely custom title bar, then you can change the colors. You can also custom draw everything. There are events for paintings. You can actually draw anything in the title bar if you want to.
Actually, a couple of people asked about whether the styling, the VCL styles would affect the custom title bar.
Yeah, the best way to do that is to turn off system colors and then just hook into the style change and set the color to whatever you want based on the style. Yeah, so there are all sorts of events there, but also if I dig into the title bar panel itself, which is the container, there are a few other things you can dig into. You can actually have custom buttons. So we have here your standard sort of close and restore, maximize, and minimize. But if you want to add like a 4th or a 5th or a 6th button that sit next to it, then you can. So if you look at the IDE itself, in the top right corner of the whole IDE here, we have the normal Windows buttons, but we have others. We have a help button. We have a button that shows a menu for light and dark themes. We have a button for saving desktops. We have layout buttons, and we have a search field. This is a text input, to search through the entire IDE. And this is using the custom title bar. It's implemented exactly like this, just by dropping these controls for the combo and the search field. And for the other buttons, we've just gone to the title bar panel and said, okay, we want some custom buttons, and we have an editor show that later, but you basically have a collection of buttons, and you just add one in the UE here. So you can basically add anything you want. So yeah, look, if I run this right now, and that will just take a moment.
Whilst we're doing that, someone asked if it was an Intel Mac or an ARM Mac that you're using.
I'm using an ARM Mac.
There you go.
I'm running ARM Windows. The IDE itself is currently compiled for Intel, but
that was another question someone asked: is will the IDE run on ARM Windows? The answer is, and as I said in the question answer, yes, it will. And people said, what about Windows ARM targets? We actually have had some liaison with the Microsoft team to do with ARM, because actually they reached out to us as well. Because it's actually in Microsoft's interest that things run on Windows ARM smoothly. It's actually kind of not our problem, so to speak, that our apps should run on Windows ARM. It's more Microsoft's problem. Otherwise, there's no point in having Windows ARM if 1 million different apps around the world don't run on it. But of course, that doesn't mean to say that we just sit back and don't do anything about ARM. And as you can see, there it is, running on a Mac ARM with a Windows ARM VM, and it's running fine. I mean, it's not. There are a couple of little areas where it's a little bit, work required, but actually it runs creditably well. That's my understanding. I don't run it like that, but
it runs very well. So you can run any Windows app, including an Intel or an ARM one on ARM Windows, and you probably won't notice the difference.
No.
And I mentioned that we have a brand new toolchain that came out 6 or 7 weeks ago. That's currently initially compiling for Windows 64-bit Intel, and of course, we're looking at ARM as well. We discussed earlier here all sorts of platforms, and I mentioned we're planning to, we're moving fast. We've been doing a lot of work. So, but yeah, it is worth noting I'm running on ARM here. And look, basically, I have a title bar and I have a combo box. I can set and change all sorts of properties and drop any kind of controls here, that I want to. So. Maybe I'll change the combo box, and there's a property. I could type in it then, if you notice, but I can make it so it's just a simple list of options. So I'll make it a drop-down list, and then I'll put in a bunch of items. 1, 2, 3, because my imagination is terrible right now. And when I run that, you'll notice. That renders differently, and I can choose 1, 2, or 3 here. And of course, you saw earlier how I had themes in the previous app and how those were affecting how the combo box drew even on the title bar and things like that. So it's very easy to do. Just to run you through what I did again, I dropped a title bar panel on the form. I put a combo box on the title bar panel, and on the form, I came to the custom title bar property. Ignored all the things about colors because they're if you just want to set them manually, and I just said use the title bar panel as the container control for what's on the title bar, and enabled it, and that's it. That's really all there is to it. There's a huge amount of stuff you can do there, including custom painting and custom buttons and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, and related to this also, the VCL contains the ability to do things like jump lists. So if those of you that are Windows fans and not using Macs with VMs that you just pretend that Windows doesn't exist, if you hover over or right-click many applications, Microsoft Word does it, and PowerPoint and a few other things. That little jump list that comes up, that list of most recently opened PowerPoint presentations or Word documents, that's a jump list, and actually we can support that in the VCL as well. Anything that you would expect a normal Windows program to do, you can do with a VCL, and you can do it really easy. The reason I love this kind of stuff is it makes me look good because I don't have to write a lot of code. And I'm a very lazy person. The older I get, the lazier I get, and it's done for you. And that's the whole benefit of RAD Studio, is that drag and drop functionality. You can write the most optimal code you like, but it's far better to use code that someone's already exercised in thousands of different apps around the world. So it's a big speed benefit, which is why it's RAD Studio, Rapid Application Development. It's not a cute name, it's a fact. I mean, it is a cute name, but it's a fact as well. It's much quicker to do it that way. I think you said 5 times faster. We did in some tests. It was 5 times faster than different ways of doing it. So good stuff.
That's correct.
Okay, so most of the other questions are kind of along the same line. So I think we've answered most of them. The STL and RTL we've talked about. Satya Kolachina, yes, I get what you're saying. He was saying that Mac's important to him. He thinks if he's writing desktop apps, he wants to target Windows and desktop. We took note of that. Don't worry, we're paying attention to what you're having to say. Zivota is talking about Direct2D. I could read this question out, but I don't know that's one we can answer directly. We developed a Win32 app that renders multiple textures, and we used Direct2D, but quickly we get out of memory because of the size of the app, presumably. We want to move on to modern C++64. The question is, do we have to skip to use the Delphi classes like tcanvas, or can we use dcom direct2d libs directly? I think that's a complicated question, to be honest, but I'm not sure.
Be able to use either. Yeah, I can sort of answer that. I mean, if you're running out of memory because of the size of the bitmaps, I can't really answer that because I'm not familiar enough with Direct2D to know how to handle that. Although maybe there are other things you can use, like I showed skier shaders, for example, and they're very performant. But yeah, we do have helper classes around Direct2D, but you can also just use the plain Direct2D library if you want to.
I mean, you gave an example in a previous webinar of being able to compile the OpenCV library, which is absolutely massive. And you've got a really great graphic of a jumbo jet, a bus or whatever, and the Statue of Liberty, and the pile of code being even higher than that, and being able to compile it. And that is our litmus test now for, is it compatible? Are we able to make the compiler do the right things? And the answer is yes, because it can compile that as our test framework, which is the real thing we want to labor on here. Is that the reason we're really excited, as the slide says, the reason we're excited about this is because it is very exciting. It is a big step forward. Adopting Clang or CLang, however you want to pronounce it, it's a big thing. The fact that you can have Skier in the project as well is also a big thing for you people that are doing graphics and wanting 2D UI and stuff like that. It makes lots of difference, lots of capability. Even add some extra controls that do things like Lottie animations and SVGs very easily and things like that. But the addition of Visual Assist, even that on its own is a big step, and yet you've got that, you've got the Clang, and you've got the Skier all built in. It's why do you think we're so hyped up about this? Because I know it sounds like I'm a car salesman here, but I'm not. I'm a developer who is pleased about what we're doing and where the direction we're going with the RAD Studio stuff. So it's good.
I try to put that on screen, is that we have great C++ and great UE tools and great productivity tooling, and we think we have something here that's worth using. That's really what we want to communicate. Give it a go. Yeah. It's worth it.
Shiraz says, smashing webinar. Native support for Windows ARM would be their choice because they're exclusively Windows development at the moment. Native support for ARM would be appreciated. We hear what you're saying. We do keep a log of your questions once we've finished here. We do take it on board. I mean, I know you might not think that we're some kind of, if this was a different webinar by a different company, some of these bigger companies, you try and get hold of the right people, and it's very difficult to know who to speak to. David Millington is approachable. He's very, very busy, and I'm busy, but I will answer your email. If you email me, and someone is saying they've emailed me, and they're telling me I haven't replied yet. I'm sure that's not true, but ian.barker@embarcadero.com. So it's my name with a dot in the middle @embarcadero.com. The same with David, david.millington@embarcadero.com. We will try and get back to you. We're not there for technical support. We'll try and help where it's feasible within the timescale, but there is a support department for this. But I want you to understand that we know when you're sitting there writing code, we know we're sitting there with you. Every time you start your job, you're working on a C++ program, that IDE is your hammer, your chisel, your fine line pen, draftsman's pen, or whatever you want. And we understand that. We do take it very personally, which is why we're really pleased about what's gone into Rad Studio 12 and C++ Builder 12. So good stuff. Ian, I sent you and David an email with some details that I could share regarding macOS development. Okay, all right, Satya, that's fine. Yeah, you go ahead and send it off to us.
Yeah, just a note on there what Ian said. Please send emails. Yeah, especially as the product manager, we need to make decisions on where to go next and what platform to do next and that kind of thing. And we pay attention to what you tell us. So drop us a line.
Yeah. A couple more questions, and then I think we'll probably call it a day after that. Will you be getting student versions for universities so that graduates are familiar with C++ Builder? Baldwin used to do that. Actually, I'm going to answer this question on behalf of the company. The answer is yes. We have a very strong student program. There is the CE version, which is a slightly earlier version of the system, but if you are a university or a college, or you're at a university or a college, please email me. That's ian.barker@embarcadero.com, and we will hook you up with people whose job it is to help students. We want students to be learning our products, and we will go out of our way to try and help where possible. We know that educational establishments, there's lots and lots of hierarchy to get through, and lots of decision makers to tick boxes and things like that, budgets and all the rest of it. But we definitely do have student versions. We have special site licenses for universities and colleges. We have special student-only versions of the software, and it is the latest version. For the students, you would get the 12.2 Rad Studio, I believe, for the student version. Not restricted. It is designed for students to learn the full thing. The CE version is different. It's intended for hobbyists and for startups. And right now it will be the equivalent of C++ Builder 12.1, I think. So it's a little bit behind 12.2, but it's still useful. Go ahead and use it. It does, quite a lot of things. I'm just seeing if there are any other questions along those lines. So student program, yes, definitely.
Yeah, I saw a few other things about, there's a question about how to sort of create a class with properties and events. Just because of time, I probably won't give a full answer, but I'll try and give like a really short answer, which is to say that the easiest way, I think, is just to look at how it's been done for some of the standard controls. So, I don't know, just find some class somewhere which has a property defined. I don't know. Let me search for an event. Okay, obviously wrong unit. Look, I mean, just for properties itself here, you use the underscore property keyword, then the type, then the name, and then you say it's equals, and I'm really zoomed in here. You give it a reader and a writer, so it can have a field or a method for either. Here it's reading directly from a field and it's writing via a method. That method will take a single parameter of the same type. And of course, you can read via a method that returns that type and write to a field as well. That's how to define a property. We have lots of documentation about this kind of thing. An event is simply a property that is a special object-oriented function pointer. So let me see if I can find that in not in this file, but we have lots of documentation on this kind of thing. So,
and in fact,
sorry, I don't really have the time to go through all of it, but it's easy, really easy.
Yeah, exactly. And in the IDE, you can just double click on one of the controls that you've got on the screen, and it will actually fill out an empty event. Or if you, I mean, there's one, and then if you just double click on there, you've just automatically created an event for what happens when someone clicks on the combo box. So, and this is rapid application development again. That's why Rad Studio is called Rad Studio. I, you know, like I say, I've been a developer for 40 years, but I am actually quite lazy, and I don't like to work too hard. And so things like this, the minute I saw Delphi, I remember the first day Delphi came out, I thought, that thinks like I do. I like that. And it's exactly the same as C++ Builder. It's just a different flavor. But pretty much all the things you can do with both of the languages are very comparable. C++ is the, you know, that is the scanning microscope of computing. If you want to get it exactly, precisely correct, then C++ is definitely the way to go. Optimal code is the thing. But if you really want to do it the easy way, then I prefer Delphi. But that's like anything. Anybody can pick on a language and say, oh, I prefer, you know, COBOL or something if you're really weird, back from the days. Okay. And Shira says, thank you. Good. Thank you too.
So I see what you mean. A lot of questions about the custom title bar. I'm glad that excited people. I have just seen like 10 questions about the same thing. Yeah, look, if we've missed questions, because I'm trying to scroll through like 100 or so, and I know it's going to be easy to miss one. We put our emails in the chat. Drop us an email. We'll be able to answer.
Yeah, and we'll review the question log afterwards and email some of the people directly, because the question log gives us your email because you registered, so we can reply to you. If it's something that's really requires us to kind of reply and say, actually, here's the answer to that, we will do. You know, like I say, we get it. You know, it's an important tool. This is not just like some notepad where you make notes or something like that. It's actually how you know, if you're a professional developer, it's how you earn a living, and if you're a hobbyist developer, it's how you have fun. And we want to make sure that we're enabling that and not getting in the way. So we want to know where things are not quite right and where things are definitely right, and you don't want us to get rid of them or change them. So let us know, and we'll make sure, you know, we pay attention. We try to be the most approachable tech company out there in terms of outreach and things like that. And I think we mostly hit that. So it's good. Okay. Well, Nuno Santos says, thank you. You're fantastic. I think he means you, not me.
I'm sure it's you as well, Ian. You've done a fantastic job running through a lot of questions. And by the way, thank you, everyone, for putting in so much questions. Love seeing so much interest. Really appreciate it.
And we'll say thanks to producer Martha, who's always in the background of every webinar. We do it everywhere. But she does all the stunt doubling for me if I get things wrong. Okay, well, I think that's it, David, unless you've got anything else to that.
No, I think that's all. Look, thanks, everyone. Drop us an email. Try it out. Go to cppbuilder.com or embarcadero.com. Try it a trial. We do have lots of documentation. But of course, if you have any questions or you're not sure about something, drop us an email, because, you know, we want to get the word out and we want you to succeed, and we'll help you do that. So thanks for watching.